Hello and welcome to Stories Across Borders. Here we discuss tales told across a variety of different mediums, books, movies, games, etc., all that good stuff. If it's a storytelling medium, we'll cover it at some point. The only rule is that we can only discuss topics in terms of storytelling. Acting, animation, music, anything like that is off limits unless it pertains directly to the way the story itself is being told. I am Daniel Radford, author, very tired man, and also your host. Why am I so tired, you ask? That is because my co-host for this cycle, John Kernan, had me watch through roughly 90 hours of content in preparation for today's episode.
Yeah.
This episode is going to continue our theme of disasters with a discussion of one of the most anime games to ever anime or game, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim.
Gotta love
Now,
it.
full disclaimer, 13 Sentinels has a huge mystery element to it. We're going to try not to spoil too much, but I'm giving us about 10 minutes before we utterly fail at that and say something immensely spoilerific. So listen at your own
I
peril.
mean, may as well just let anybody who knows now. This is more than just a spoiler warning. You basically can't talk about this game at all without spoiling it. So, if you have any interest in playing 13 Sentinels, go play it, because it's good. It's
It
really
is.
good.
It is really good.
Don't waste this opportunity if you want it. If you don't or you've already played it, you're in the right place. Although, if you don't, I question things about you.
With that out the way, though, I honestly don't even really know where to begin with this game. The narrative is so layered and complex that it feels disingenuous to just call it a disaster story when that makes up such a tiny fraction of what it is.
Well, since it still is, in fact, a disaster story, we could always start there.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking maybe you could give us a bit of a summary since this was your suggestion.
Sure, that works for me. Sentinels is a game that appeals to me on a very primal level, on a game that cares more about two things than anything else. One is cool giant fighting robots that do all the things cool giant fighting robots have ever been known to do, including transform, fight giant monsters, potentially accidentally wreck bits of city around them, be piloted by emotionally damaged teenagers, and time travel. With the second thing being just talk. Everybody just talk all the time about everything.
That
Um,
that is the basest, barest summary of what 13 Sentinels is.
13 Sentinels is a lovely game which puts what I consider to be a very nice emphasis on both mystery and the writing above all else, in that it's got its cool missions where you fight the giant monsters and the giant robots and everything. But time-wise, I would say that takes up like maybe 15% of the game. Maybe. Because those missions are short, sweet, explosive, and badass. And between that, all you are doing is watching a bunch of scenes jumping from character to character because uh, surprise, prize, Teen Sentinels has 15 main characters.
Yeah, 13 playable characters, 15 main characters, all of them with not only their own personal story arcs, but with interweaving parts of the overall narrative, which is
Yes.
insane.
Yes, absolutely. To the and you this may surprise you. None of these characters are going through alternate takes or different things. All of their stories are happening, and they are all happening concurrently at that, to the point where when all is said and done, despite the crazy amount of different things you see going on, after it all is done, there's one single solid timeline.
Yeah,
Despite the time travel, quote unquote.
yeah, despite the game going to extreme lengths to, I won't say convince you otherwise, but give the appearance of a bunch of distinct timelines or time periods, everything actually flows in a single linear narrative that they just tell to you non-linearly.
Gotta love
That
it.
was the most confusing way I could have explained a coherent timeline told in non-linear segments through all these different lenses. But I did it, and we're stuck with it now. And like the craziest, like one of the craziest things, like even before we get into like just the going into the disaster elements and stuff, one of the craziest things for me about this game is that it is made almost entirely of references to other media and still manages to be its own unique thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like it's a love letter to so many different tropes, especially anime tropes, but not just anime tropes.
No, I mean, I would argue it actually takes more heavily from like 80s sci-fi.
Oh yeah,
Or even going further back, there's a lot of references to like H.G. Wells and stuff as well.
true. It's a game that really is oozing love from every facet of its writing and its world building.
It's
Like love for both the thing that they are making as they make it and all the things that inspired it, which is a lot.
yeah, it's kind of the epitome of something being a homage and a love letter without being a ripoff. I think it is incredibly impressive that basically every character's personal storyline is in itself a reference to a different sort of trope or media or story, whilst also being part of a larger story that is also made of references to other things. It is just
Yeah.
so layered, and again, I can't stress enough, if you haven't played it, go do that instead of listening to us talk about it. Then come back and listen to us talk about it so you understand.
Yeah, don't be a scumbag.
I'm not gonna lie though, I mean, it's an expensive game, but it's probably worth the money. But to get
It goes on sale pretty regularly,
that is
I think.
that is a blessing. Um, to get like more down into the actual nature, because so far all we've done is say, "Wow, it's really complex." um, so it does have the story does have, or at least a chunk of the story is essentially a disaster element. Specifically, it takes a lot from it takes some heavy inspiration from. I mean, it even calls the things kaiju, but it takes inspiration from old kaiju movies like Godzilla and all that, and I suppose also their modern interpretations. The basic premise is a bunch of emotionally damaged teenagers from different time periods all end up fighting these invading robot kaiju in big robots of their own. Uh, Gross oversimplification of what is actually going on. But that is your main disaster element, the main crux, the inevitable disaster that is always going to happen and has
Yeah.
happened before multiple times. Is
Before we know anything else, we know that there's big, scary, giant monster robots, and they are going to attack, and there's a lot of them. So much so that the fight may as well be hopeless.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, because everything does stem, at least at first, from that one premise. But it's interesting in what it does with that because it does something that a lot of disaster stories don't do. And it turns the how did we get to this? What is going on? Why is this disaster happening into a mystery? Which is pretty rare because usually disasters are pretty straightforward. I can't remember its name. The only other real example I can think of that. Excuse me. Sorry, two other examples. One I can name is something I mentioned briefly in one of the previous episodes. Is a book called The Swarm by Frank Schatzing, which is a sort of eco thriller sci-fi disaster story, which also incorporates a mystery element of why is the continental shelf breaking, why is the Gulf Stream stopped, all that sort of stuff. And there was also a movie that I saw once with a name I cannot remember, a cast I cannot remember, but it was also sort of a disaster story with a mystery element of how did this disaster happen. It's a pretty rare thing, as far as I can think of, to turn a disaster into a mystery. So that in and of itself is really interesting, and I don't think it really takes away from the disaster either.
No, no, it really doesn't. It's there's so many different things going on, and honestly, if there's one thing writing wise that I think is probably the biggest achievement of this game, uh, and it's something we talk about a lot in stories, but one of the things we don't talk about that often because it really doesn't apply to that many stories directly, and that's pacing. Because the thing about pacing is you can basically multiply the difficulty of pacing a story by the number of point of view characters you have and the number of point of view what you call it time settings you have. The more different times people things take place and the more different people we see events through, the harder it is to pace a story coherently and well. And despite having those 13 POV characters and what four different times that like decades that things take place in,
Um,
13 Sentinels still pulls it
Technically
off.
five, I think.
Oh yeah, five, really. True. And like it still manages to pace things well and in a good way, which kind of comes back to that thing I mentioned earlier about there still being one solid timeline despite the different characters and the different times things take place in. And one of the ways they do that well that I love, that's going to force you to play every character a decent amount is like you can still to a point do things and see through the stories of characters in whatever order you want, except every character has certain events that you will not be allowed to see until you see the event for another from another character's perspective that gives that one context, which
Yeah,
is great because even if you're trying to power through one solid character, you will hit points where it's just like, all right, the next thing this character goes through is like this event over here. No, you can't do it until you see this as this other character. Sorry, your brain's not ready.
yeah, it's interesting because they simultaneously give you the freedom to effectively choose the order you experience the story in, which only works because of the non-linear storytelling they're going with anyway. But they give you that freedom to experience the story in so many different ways, but they also very carefully manage the information you're allowed to have at any given point despite that. So you simultaneously have this hugely complex but very free-form narrative and also a very curated experience. It shouldn't work, but it does.
No, if you tell anybody like on paper, if you brought up 13 Sentinels in a writing class and just described in words to somebody what it was, everybody would look at you saying that's a stupid idea. You can't make a story out of that. But
It's
fuck that, they did it.
I mean they could have done it, but it would have been I feel like this is the only medium you could tell this story in any like this story in any resemblance of what it is in this way.
Oh yeah.
Like the agency the audience has plays a huge part in the experience, but at the same time, it's still very much a story, which is, that's one of the things I really like about games as a storytelling medium, is that they open up so many different avenues to tell and experience stories. It's like the ultimate form of a choose your own adventure story.
It really is. It's honestly, it's kind of like the epitome of what choose your own adventure stories should strive to be. Like it pulls it off right. You can look at things in your different order, you can go through your things. Of course, to be fair, the one thing it doesn't do that a choose your own adventure story does is let the choices you make directly lead to things like bad ends. But the game definitely does still, in a way, have its alternate hypothetical endings. It shows
The
us.
the
We
implied
just
there's the sort
they're
of
just not
implied
canon.
yeah, there's like the implied bad ends of you lose, and you know what losing looks like because you've seen it in the other time periods.
Well, not just that. Thanks to the time travel and stuff, we also get to see we also kind of get to see in a way fail states for our characters.
Yeah,
There's more to them than that, but they're there.
and I think like that's one of the most important things as well because it just because of the time travel element and the looping and all that, we get to see even more of the impact that these events have on the characters. Because I think we've talked about this a fair bit at this point, but one of the most important elements of telling a good disaster story is making us care about the disaster and how it impacts the people experiencing it. Otherwise, it's just popcorn, or popcorn viewing, I should say. And this game does a very good job of making it clear that these events matter to the people experiencing them. Either they're people who have already experienced it and they've lost their homes, or they're people who have seen it from a different perspective and know that it's coming for them next. And they sort of have to emotionally steel themselves for the battle ahead because they can't let it happen.
Yeah, it's in a way, even without really directly knowing it, they they all know what's at stake and what's going to happen if they fail. Because through different methods, each character kind of gets to already see how things can and will go wrong before the story as we know it even properly starts for them.
Yeah, we're thrown into the story at a point where the like in the sort of prologue section, we're thrown into it at a point where the like focus characters for that section have no idea what is going on. They've basically been thrust into these big ass robots to fight other big ass robots with no idea why they're there or what is happening. Uh, Only that they don't really have a choice if they want to, have themselves and their friends survive. And then the rest of the story provides context for everything around that. You get to see the fail states, you get to see what happens if they lose, you get to experience people who have effectively have lost and had to go through that in the aftermath. It's it's interesting because it manages to simultaneously be a true disaster story where the disaster is inevitable, it's going to happen, things are going to get wrecked and have been wrecked before, whilst also giving you that sort of pseudo disaster stop it from happening element. It's the time travel really does let it have its cake and eat it too.
Yeah, which is a rare case because I mean, there's a reason people always say you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, we said it in the very first episode. We established that it feels disingenuous to call something a disaster movie if the disaster isn't going to happen. And this story somehow manages to have a Schrodinger's disaster where it simultaneously is happening and can be stopped.
Yep, exactly. Thanks to time travel.
Thanks to time travel, and also thanks to giving the disaster a degree of agency itself.
True.
Because I think that's one of the things that sort of like separates kaiju movies from disaster movies and store. I say movies because the kaiju stuff is really pretty isolated to the big screen. I think I don't know any books off the top of my head that really do it.
Yeah, yeah, it generally is.
Um, but that sort of story is like agent like they have the same kind of effects when a kaiju and like a tsunami or an earthquake or a bombing. The difference is just agency that the threat can think and feel and react and make choices, which I think is an
Yeah,
interesting element. But like when you boil it all down, a lot of the time kaiju are just personifications of disasters anyway. The Godzilla is representative of the fear of the atomic bomb, and the kaiju in Pacific Rim are, I think, pretty heavily inspired by the effects of climate change because they are literally terraformers. That sounds familiar.
Hmm. Terraforming.
Looks at the name
Like,
Aegis Rim.
yeah, that definitely wasn't on purpose.
No, not at all.
Who would ever?
Wow,
How could
I have gotten
anybody?
so off track. I cannot actually remember the point I was making at the beginning of all that.
Nice.
I hope you do.
Uh, Giant robots are bad and need to be stopped.
Okay, well, that happened. That was like a solid, what, 5 to 10 minutes of discussion, so I'm not editing it out. The audience is gonna have to deal with it.
Of course. Why would you ever edit out something like that?
We're just gonna do a very 13 Sentinels thing here and make you come to your own conclusions for a while.
That's right. Enjoy thinking about that one, folks.
So I'm just gonna rewind back to another point in time. Also very fitting thematically, and we'll maybe go back to the whole uh, Master having a personal impact on the characters, making for a compelling narrative element. We've come back to that a lot in this sort of segment of stories because it's so important, and will probably lead to some more interesting discussion. Because I said at the beginning, it feels almost disingenuous to call this a disaster story because of how much other stuff is going on. But you did rightly say it still qualifies, and I think the reason it still qualifies is because the disaster is always on the characters' minds.
Yeah,
Like the shadow of that, even at times where seemingly completely unrelated dramatic events and things are happening, the shadow of that disaster is still looming over everyone's heads and influencing the actions of basically every cast member. And again, this is an extensive cast. There's 13 POV characters, 15 main characters total, including that sort of 13, and then a bunch of other significant side characters, even if some of them are technically the same person.
yeah,
And time travel will do that.
yeah. The story has a lot of interesting things to pull off when it comes to that stuff.
And I mean, there's an inception moment there too, anyway, because the whole disaster scenario that is hanging over all these characters' heads is spawned by another disaster scenario that happened in the past that could easily be its own story instead of being just the origin point in the lore of 13 Sentinels.
Very true. Yeah, and there's a lot that can be said about those individual events of the past and how they are not just the cause of everything. They're not just the potential cause of the current events going on, but have great, far-reaching consequences, while at the same time, arguably, not even being relevant.
I mean, because that's the thing, like, from the perspective of the characters, this is all fascinating stuff. But outside of like Goto, who is, deep diving to get to the truth, most of the characters don't really care. They
Yeah,
have bigger problems. Like, literally, physically bigger problems in the form of the kaiju.
and the only reason Goto is going through all that anyways and like trying to get through to the truth that way is because he already knows more about the truth than everyone else.
Yeah. But for the audience, to understand the disaster that the characters are experiencing, you have to understand the origins of the original disaster that led to all this to begin with.
And they really go out of their way to be piecemeal with revealing all that to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ideal way to present a mystery, isn't it? Is to just spoon feed tiny little bits of information and then make people figure the rest out for themselves until
Hell
eventually all
yeah.
those little pieces come together and it's just like, oh. And again, because of the non-linear freeform method of storytelling, the order you find out all this information is going to be different for basically everyone who experiences the story.
That's right. Not every some people are gonna get a big chunk of the way through the game before they have any idea why Natsuno's always running off to go do stuff off screen and doesn't have time to talk to anybody about anything because there's no time. Or
Or
why she talks to her bag like Lily. Put it in
uh,
the bag, BJ.
I may have made that joke several times throughout watching to myself because no one was watching with me, just to add to the shame. But um, yeah, exactly. There is always other stuff happening around the characters that you will get no explanation for until you experience it from a different character's perspective,
Nope. They have no need to make up contrivances for the other characters to find out the character secrets, because just play that character.
which is that is definitely nice. I mean, there's also two fun like fringe benefits to that in that the first big one that I really appreciate is that it makes the world feel kinetic and alive.
Yeah. It also has a nice touch of like,
I suppose it's kind of the same thing you were saying, really.
yeah, and I like it because I think it puts a nice limit on playing as the different characters and really allowing them to have their own perspectives and stories. Because, like, sorry, but if you're gonna pick your favorite character and just want to mainline through everything they do, that means if you see another character do something weird that makes you curious, you might not get an explanation. You have to you have to actually see it through their eyes. Like the just because like sure, the story is going to leave around a lot of what you call it. I'm trying to remember my not Pavlov,
Schrodinger? That's something
not
totally
Schrodinger,
different.
the
That's just a.
gun.
Oh,
I'm trying
uh,
to remember who
I've
which
just.
philosopher.
Oh, I knew this until you brought it up, and now I'm.
Yeah, that's what's happening
Oh
to me.
no! What?
It's so sad.
It is. It is like a. It is like a German name or something, I think, or is it Russian maybe.
Well, oh well. Uh, everybody
Uh,
generally
Chekhov.
knows that. Yes,
Chekhov's
there's a
gun.
lot of Chekhov's guns in this story, but the nice part is none of the Chekhov's guns are uh, are attached for the most part to the story as a whole. They are attached to their individual chunks of the story, which I enjoy the fact that like, oh, that gun may be on the table, but you know, even though Billy saw the gun, Billy might not ever see that gun get shot. Sorry, maybe you have to go to Jane's story to see that gun get shot. Or if you
I
really
mean,
want to see guns get shot, go through
Meg-
Mr. Aiseki Gahara's story.
oh, I wasn't even gonna go there. I would say
Or Megami.
yeah, I was gonna say Megami, who's shoots at least one person every segment of her story.
No, Megami does not shoot guns. She purifies witches. Thank you. She's
Like,
doing it for Fluffy.
yeah, this game goes hard on the references.
Sure does. I hope you like talking cats.
Uh, that's that's one of the funniest things about that is that there is because there are so many references to so many different types of media. There's no way anyone is gonna catch them all.
No.
I am like I've been able to vaguely identify some of them or like the genres or tropes that each individual character's story is referencing because I'm pretty certain every like POV character is actually referencing a different type of story. I haven't been able to pick them all.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Some of the characters are downright referential to their very existence.
but yeah, we are tangenting a lot with this one, but that is not a surprise.
It's a very tangential story.
But yeah, because of the way it's structured, it makes everything feel very alive and kinetic. Like, because one of the worst things with a story is when it feels like the world exists just to tell the story of a few characters. And I feel like there's two ways you can avoid this. Is that you can give the impression or hint at a vaster world beyond what the main focus characters are experiencing. That sort of implied world building and stuff like that. Which is perfectly valid. I like that. I've used that. Um,
Oh yeah, I mean implications are the only way to make world building subtle. Otherwise, you just have to outright tell people things, which, you know, it's not always bad. There are situations where just telling people things is good. But there's a reason the popular term show don't tell was coined.
yeah, exactly. But this game leans. It does use that a bit, but it actually I think it leans more to the other way of handling this, which is just populating the world with a lot of different people, each with their own motives and experiences. And because you can experience them from different POVs, it just adds an extra layer to that, which is just brilliant. But because there's all these different key players with their own secrets and goals and experiences, everything else feels so much more alive
You know
and
who
is more compelling
definitely
for
doesn't have any secrets? Tetsuya Ida.
it. Yeah, no, none whatsoever. I think there is exactly one character in this story who has no secrets.
Megumi?
No, she's
Oh,
got
no,
some
wait,
pretty
two.
big
Well,
secrets.
she kinda does and kinda doesn't.
She
Like,
thinks she's talking to a talking cat. That is a pretty major secret. I
yeah,
was
but she's also like almost dumb enough to outright try to tell people.
That's true. I was
But no, no, you're right. To be fair, we can't forget our resident King Himbo.
That could mean two different people.
No, there's more than one Himbo. There's only one King Himbo, and that's a man who needs some yakisoba pan.
Yeah, I mean he is a secret in a way
Yeah,
because people are
that's true.
trying to not reveal the fact he is from the past, but he doesn't do a great job of concealing that himself.
What the hell's a cell phone?
It's so it is so funny like watching the two POV characters from that time period's different experiences with like being jumped 40 years into the future because Miura handles it so much better.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you know, to be fair, of course he does. Like he's got he gets a nice place to stay.
Yeah,
Somebody's gonna help him cook food. Uh, a similar relative to a nice old lady he once knew.
and his
Our
younger
other
gets
friend gets to
Okino
be
who likes to fuck with him.
our other friend he gets to be fucked with by Okino while being homeless and penniless
and
and
very
getting fights picked
confused.
with him with random school students because he's wearing the wrong uniform and they think he's a rival student.
Yeah, honestly, the fact that he is somehow one of the most emotionally stable members of the cast says a lot.
It really
There
does.
is stability in simplicity. Which, to be fair, I feel like that's true of characters in general, because it's true of people. The simpler a person's goals, motivations, and just feelings in general are, the more stable a foundation they have for existing within a story.
True. Very true.
The characters with the least going on are always the most emotionally sound, because of course they are. They have the least going on. But even his storyline still throws twists at you. Like you think you're safe when when you're playing through his storyline because he is so simple and he's just trying to figure out why he's feeling things and
Yeah,
why he's in the
especially the
future.
gay things.
Yeah, he is he is a guy from the 40s who has been shot forward through to the 80s, dealing with someone from another like 40 years ahead of that.
Somebody who's a lot smarter than him, a lot more knowledgeable than him, has money and isn't homeless like him, and
And
also
enjoys
who,
messing with his repressed sexuality. Which is not
while
okay.
while
Okuno is not
also being
necessarily a good person.
while also being very vague about their own, they
Yeah,
really keep your toes on like, how does Okino feel though? Like,
because Okuno's playing coy the whole time.
eh, Okino plays nothing but coy throughout the entire story till the very last moment, no
Yeah,
matter who he's with or what's going on.
like
There's
literally,
only one thing he is not coy about, and that is the fact that he likes girls' clothes. He is not trans. He is he is what we in the community like to call an otokonoko.
I do not know what that means. You are like outweaving me by several levels with that one.
It's basically just a very effeminate cross-dressing boy.
You couldn't have said that.
No, because we are talking about the most anime game to ever anime, and it's weeb time.
There's a quote. I
I don't,
keep
I
I
wish I hadn't said it in that tone because now I'm imagining it as kind of like the Morbin meme,
oh
like
no,
it's weeping time.
you've done it. You've done it now. Someone someone we know is going to listen to this and just send us memes.
No, no, please, not like this.
Or worse, someone we don't know.
Oh no,
And you see, it's my Twitter that gets plugged at the end of all of these, so you know I'm gonna get the memes.
it's okay. I'm sure people will find mine too, even though I'm not posting it yet.
I keep wanting to go back to something deep and meaningful here, but there's plenty of that here, but there's just so much I can't choose, like what to talk about. I want to keep it relevant to the disaster theme, but it's so hard when so much is happening in this game. It is,
There's a lot.
it's, we keep saying it, but it's impossible to understand just how much is there until you've at least seen a fraction of it.
True.
That is to say, like we've been heaping praise on the game and the story. I do think it has weaknesses
Oh, I mean,
because
yeah,
everything that complex is going to have weaknesses. That is why like, there's advantages to telling simple stories because the it's the same with any structure or program or any of that, which you know that is a whole thing that comes into play in the story of 13 Sentinels, even like not at a meta level, as part of the narrative, is that the more complicated you make something, the more likely it's going to have holes in it.
yeah, of course. And honestly, it's amazing that this game came out as well as it did. Not just for everything that it's doing that's going on, but Vanillaware, for the most part, in their games, is not known for the games being amazingly written. Uh, but like here we are. The game is really well written, and that's so
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, you can tell there was a labor of love by people who worked their asses off to make everything so good. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to do a disservice to anyone listening by just heaping on the praise because there are definitely things that not many things to be fair, but there are definitely some areas though where it does kind of drop the ball a little bit. I think the given how important it is to make you care about the characters and the events they're going through, I think a lot of the many romantic subplots got to a point where some of them felt very underdeveloped and shoehorned in.
No.
Did you just say no?
Oh, come on.
Look,
That's all.
I have nothing against a romantic subplot that is executed well and makes sense. But Iori knows literally nothing about A other than he has a gun and a motorcycle, and that just does it.
I mean, have you seen how she grows up to dress? Of course she's a sucker for a guy on a motorcycle.
Yes. Yeah. But that's not much of a basis to like build what is a huge part of her personal story on, because ultimately that because I'm fairly confident she is inspired by romance stories.
Oh yeah,
So obviously that forms a huge crux of like her personal story arc, and it's just so thin. And it's a shame because so much of the other stuff that is built around her, kind of, is so important and interesting.
true. She is a big deal.
Yeah, that like Iori is like such an important figure in the story that it is almost unfair to the character that that is the extent of her personal storyline in it.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, it it does kind of fit her characterization in that she's the one who's like the most a normal high school girl, but still.
Yeah. Well, she's almost. I don't know if that's true, actually. I think Tomi is actually probably more of just a normal person, to be honest. But
Well,
Iori
except that
is
like
representative of
Tommy
the
is
normal
smart and
fictional,
savvy.
if that makes sense. She's more representative of the fictional norm than the actual norm, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That she's still a like fine character conceptually. I just think that for how important she is, her like plot line was thin. Which
It
that's
could
not
definitely be a little thin.
that's not to say like don't get me wrong. That is such a minor thing to gripe about, given how much the game does right.
Definitely does a lot.
Yeah, I mean that is one of 13 POV storylines you follow through, on top of an incredibly complex and detailed overarching narrative that is told non-linearly and through all those perspectives and still makes sense. So it's not a huge slight to say one character was a bit less interesting, at least from her perspective. Weirdly, her involvement in other people's stories feels way more significant.
Fair.
But that, I suppose, in a way, that just ties back into the whole multi POV thing, where you can experience the same scenes and things through different eyes, and suddenly they contextually have a whole different vibe to them. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think I think important, full disclosure, to at least not just heap on the praise and be a little more critical. But I'm going to stop doing that now because I've said my one thing for the sake of fairness, and now I'm going to go back to being unapologetically a fan of the game.
Yeah.
You got one audience.
You get your critique. There it is. Enjoy it. We like this game. It's good. Good game.
Yeah, I mean, we only do this for like roughly an hour, so there's no way we're going to get through everything. So I think maybe we should just start cherry picking the things we really want to talk about.
Mm. There are so many things.
There are so many things. Okay.
I like the scale of the fights. I like that now to be fair, it's at least partially a budget saving measure. But like man, I love how during during the big fights and scenes and stuff, you just get to have uh such a big bird's eye view of everything going on and like just reduce everything to small little sprites and the buildings to tiny little specks on the map so that you get the actual like Gundam style feeling of seeing stuff like, oh, look at these big, huge missiles just raining down all over the city. You see that explosion? That may kind of look just like a small bubble of an explosion, except hey, guess what? It's 3 times the size of one of those buildings.
Yeah, the game gives you a very good appreciation of scale, and I'm gonna save you from breaking our rule. by tying this back into the story. You're welcome. It
Excuse me. Who said I was breaking our rule? Rude.
uh right doing that. It gives you a very good sense of scale because you experience it both from the personal close-up scale of a person seeing all of this huge shit around them and having that reference of this is a person, this is a sentinel, that's a building, but as well as that sort of macro scale view of how vast an area is being affected by all of this. And it always ties back into the narrative experience because it comes through, like that scale comes through in the sense of how overwhelmed the characters are and also their concern for collateral damage, which I appreciate is a thing that they have to the point where it is even like mechanically kept track of in the game.
Yeah, they are not okay with just blowing up buildings.
They have a the
Yeah,
characters have a genuine concern for the people in their lives and their community as a whole. And so even though it's not just they're not going to pull like a Man of Steel where it's just like it's just a building. Everything matters, which is something I appreciate a lot.
yeah, I like it when things matter.
I mean, that's why people, audiences and critics both rag on stories like Man of Steel or literally all of the Michael Bay movies ever. Not that they're inherently bad movies, but it's why people can
I
sour on
mean,
them very quickly is because they're spectacle and shallow.
yeah,
They're fun
and sometimes they are bad.
sometimes. I mean, they're fun,
Oh
but
yeah, they're always fun.
you don't get the sense that you know what? I'm gonna give Michael Bay his credit here. Actually, I feel like the characters in the I think it was like the third one of his Transformers movies. I don't know. He's done like a million at this point. But they genuinely seemed disturbed by how messed up the city was getting. So I'll give him that one. But that brand of movie in general, or book or comic or whatever, where people don't really seem that bothered by the damage being done to their surroundings, immediately pulls you out of it as an audience.
Yeah,
And this game embraces the fact that collateral damage is happening and that there are tiny little people running around in the streets at the same time as these big ass robots are doing war. Doing war! I'm a writer. My job is to do. I'm about to do it again. My job is to be good at words, and I just said
your job
doing
is
war.
to do story.
Remember when I opened this particular episode by saying I'm very tired and it's all your fault?
Yeah,
You're sharing the blame for that mess.
that's fine. Because every other time we've done one of these, I've been very tired and it's been your fault.
No antagonism between the hosts on this podcast.
Never, not even a little bit.
But you know who else is tired? All of the pilots.
Oh yeah, yeah. You gotta. That's
Segway.
another fun way to integrate the mechanics into the story for sure. Is
Yeah,
like you also have to rotate when you're doing the battles. You have to rotate which pilots you're using because in what is referential to a few different things, but certainly most of all, Evangelion. Uh, there's a lot of mental stress to the pilot of one of the Sentinels,
yeah. I mean,
and
which makes a lot of sense because they're not like piloting them with controls. They're piloting them primarily with their minds.
yeah, and you risk causing a little bit of insanity if
Just a
you
little bit
don't
of
give them a
insanity.
break every now and then.
Which is represented by the fact that you just in the combat stuff you just straight up cannot uh, have a character in a combat if they have been overloaded because they're people and they get tired when their brain is trying to act as the nervous center for a thing literally hundreds of times the size of the body it's built for. It's just in general, one of the things I love about the game is that it is a marriage of mechanics and narrative where everything that you as a player mechanically experience is representative of something happening narratively in the game.
Yeah.
The characters have to rotate because they get tired. The stuff that you used upgrade, good job, upgrade your big mechs is derived of stuff you're basically harvesting from the evil robot kaiju things.
Yeah, you gotta do them upgrades.
You you really do. All of that is there's a counter for collateral damage. All of those things tie
They mean
into your
something.
immersion and experience of the story, which is I think is fantastic. I love it when a game's mechanics are structured in a way that's in service to the story being told. It's one of the things I really liked about Three Houses is that a lot of the mechanics tie into things narratively and vice versa as well. Just anything that
True.
does that, I think is great. But I won't digress too much into that because it's a favorite of mine, so it'll definitely come up in its own episode at some point.
Digression is fun.
I mean, like we said, if ever there was an episode to tangent a lot on, it's this one because it'll be thematically appropriate.
True.
Let's see, what else is there that was done really well? I feel like I would be being unfair to the game having harped on about Iori for as long as I did if I didn't and immediately I say immediately, it's been like what 10, 20 minutes, I don't know. I'm not watching the timer that closely. I probably should be. Anyway, I feel like I am duty bound to also bring up our boy Ninji Ogata and
Ninja
by
does deserve
and
some love.
also Tomi
Tommy,
because those two have a romantic subplot that is actually super well written and makes me care about the characters and adds stakes to the disaster scenario because
it's so good. I was not ready to get like invested in it like I did.
it's because it happens so naturally and believably and has actual substance that makes you understand why
Let
they
nobody
have
ever
the
try to say that Nenji Ogata is not a man. And he's not a man because he tries to act like a man. He's a man because when he's got something he needs to do, something he needs to say, he does it.
sometimes badly.
Sometimes badly.
Actually
But what he
usually
doesn't
badly,
do,
but he
what he does
tries.
not do is bullshit people. And not only does he not bullshit the people around him, he doesn't bullshit the audience either. And that's what I like about him.
Yeah, I did not expect because early on your experience with him is just oh he's the delinquent character, okay. I
Look at his
I did not
what do you
suspect him
call it?
to not just be a reference to the trope, but also a deliberate subversion of it.
Yeah, he's a
Because
lot of
out
fun.
of all of the characters, even though he is kind of ashamed to admit it to an extent, he is also one of the characters that is the most in touch with their feelings and affected by the personal stakes of things.
It's true. Yeah,
His the entire second half of his personal storyline really just revolves around how desperate he is to not fail to save Tomi in what we know will be an inevitable disaster scenario. Even though
and he's
she's
gonna do
perfectly
it, my
capable
God.
of defending herself and he knows it.
Not just defending herself, but also defending him.
Yeah, because she kicks ass.
Tomy
But that's
kicks ass.
that's just not the important factor. And something that's kind of subtly alluded to through that whole experience is that that scenario has taken shape in his head because he has regrets about how he handled it the first time. It's so good.
Lingering.
You like you really feel like those characters matter to each other, and that in turn makes you as the audience care about them and not want to see them stepped on by a kaiju.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to pay for using that particular phrasing later.
Well, I mean, could be worse. There's not a whole lot of room for kink with these kaiju, so there's that.
No. It is.
Don't worry. I'm sure nobody who watches this in the future, if it gets popular, will ever make art of you getting stepped on by a, a giant dummy mommy robot.
You say that, but even we don't need to blow up for that because we know people who will do it.
That's right. And I'll make sure to tell them.
You suck. That's it. Third episode. We're done.
No, no, you can't. This is your destiny.
No, we have established 13 Sentinels has taught us that destiny is not predetermined.
Until it repeats again and you just get a different art style of getting stepped on by the giant robot dummy mommy.
What? This episode has been a disaster from start to finish. I'm stumbling over my words. We started recording like
Yeah,
20 minutes late
exactly.
because of
See,
noises in the
we're being
background.
thematic. It's a disaster story.
Okay. You know what? We're gonna end it there. We've been going for over an hour.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, guys. It all comes full circle, just like 13 Sentinel.
This is your I don't know, 45th reminder to go and play this game or watch a playthrough. Experience the story in some way because it really is just that good. Even
It's
Yori
very
kind of ish. Uh, you can find me at Daniel Wright 7 on Twitter, and you will be able to find my wonderful co-host here in other
That's
places
me.
as well in the near future, but I have promised not to plug anything yet.